How do you weigh the risk of focusing on new innovations or staying on a conventional path to a career? Like when you go to college, how do you make the choice to invest in new innovations or like since you're paying so much for college, how can you not just focus on what you're there to be there to do?
What you choose in college, I think, when I first went to college, I thought, I was on that Asian track, be an engineer, do this, and I thought that was what it was about. But I quickly learned that it didn't matter what I studied. Careers, as long as I studied the math and the science course, people ended up in careers that had very little direct tie to what they said, certainly at the higher level. And it became more about, could I find something that I was interested in learning? Could I really find something that made a difference in my life and what I would want to do in the future? And that was a path of discovery. And I think most adults will tell you that the individual classes that they took in college, probably 80–90% of them were irrelevant. I happened to take a computer science class that turned out to be very relevant. It was just an intro class. I was happy that I took other intro classes that were helpful. I took an ethics and moral reasoning class that probably kept me out of jail, so I think that was useful. Made me think a little bit more deeply about right and wrong and things like that. And I was around a lot of other people who were trying different careers or different areas of study, and it was very exciting from that perspective. But don't stress out too much. In my experience, about a particular major or not. Try lots of different introductory classes and see what you end up enjoying.
I think that's a very interesting question. I think that so many people, when upon entering college, they have come to go to college with a dream. They usually have a goal, right? And what happens is that there's many people would say, well, do whatever that suits your interest. But I understand one of the hardest things to do, identify, is actually your interest. I'd like to introduce a rule that one of my friends told me to give it a go. It was this: whatever that you are doing, worry less about what is that you're interested in. As long as you can identify anything that's slightly interesting, anything that sparks that momentary euphoria, that is usually a good indicator that you're probably onto something that's interesting. And then you can analyze from there, what is it about this aspect of this task I'm doing that's really interesting to me. That's usually a very good way to identify your interest area. I encourage you to give that a try. Like he said, a lot of times you probably will end up doing something that's quite different from your original intention, but the difference is that you'll be there and be fairly happy.
I'd like to share a story that I didn't get to cover because I ran out of time. But when I just graduated from high school, I went to a conference in Dallas where one of the speakers was William Coors III, who was the grandson of the founder of the Coors Brewery. And I was 18. This guy was old, probably my age. And he was at the time the CEO of Coors Brewery. And he was the first CEO of a publicly traded company I'd ever met. And there were probably about 200 of us high school seniors at this event. And he gave this very moving discussion about how he became the chairman of Coors, obviously very wealthy, very famous in Colorado, and how he became that because he was the grandson and his father was the one that ran it before him. But he felt he should have been a doctor. He said when he was in college, he wanted to study medicine. But because of the family pressure, he got forced into business to take over this company. And now he was 60 and he was looking back on his life. And he was saying that he regretted not becoming a doctor, not standing up for himself to become a doctor because that's what he thought his passion was. And he said, because I didn't become a doctor, I never knew whether I would have been a good doctor or a bad doctor. Maybe I would have been a terrible doctor. Malpractice suit after malpractice suit, everybody died and came into my office. But because I never tried, I never got to close that issue of whether I should be a doctor or not. And because I didn't do that, now instead of saving people's lives, I'm peddling alcohol. Okay? That's a very awful thing to face in your life at the end of your life. to think that your whole career has been going in the wrong direction because you did not stand up for yourself to do what you thought you wanted your life to be. And maybe he would have been a little country doctor and wouldn't have made much money or whatever, but you can't change that. And that kind of regret is the kind of regret that can last a lifetime.
Yep.
Hello.
Yep.
So, what are some basic skills needed to innovate, Mr. Chung? What are some basic skills needed for innovation, or in order to be able to innovate?
You know, I mean, there are lots of things to innovate. I mean, I listed various industries where things are going on. If I really knew, I would do it. Right? I said that earlier. You know, I don't know what they're going to be. You're young, you're going to see new things, take advantage of it.
No, I mean, what are some basic skills that you need in order to be able to innovate?
Oh, skills. You know, I think you need the core skills. So I think you need to be able to analyze, you need to be able to read, write, communicate. Public speaking is huge, and the willingness to try and fail, right? So those are the basics. The actual topic itself matters much less, because if you know how to learn, it really doesn't matter what the topic is. You can learn it very quickly. And all of you will be moving into fields where you will be constantly learning. So even if you go into a tradition, let's say you go into medicine, you will be constantly learning. What you do when you first come out of medical school will be totally different from what you do 2 decades later. And if you're not constantly learning, you're falling behind. So learning and the love of learning is something that needs to exist as a lifetime skill. If you don't want to do that, then you're on a different path.
And another question. So, how would you be able to spot big opportunities or careers that doesn't seem to exist?
Yeah, you know, that's hard, right? But I think the first step is a willingness to be open, right? And to keep your network of connections open so that you know what other people are doing. It's easier to connect with people now more than ever, whether it's through your direct peer group or other people that are just online and looking for things that I mean, it's very easy to get involved into areas that are new. You see something like a company that is doing something that's innovative, you can go to their website, you can find the president of the company and write a letter to the president. It's very easy, you know? I mean, you can reach out to people in ways that you couldn't before. And I bet that person doesn't get that many contacts, you know? Or that's the way when you put on top of the HR pile to say, hey, interview this person. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. But, you know, present what you can deliver to them. What I was saying earlier about being able to deliver profits. What do you have that they would want?
Thank you.
I just want to add one more point about creativity. What I think is very crucial to creativity are 2 things. The first one is depth. If you want to become a very creative person, I agree with him that you need to explore depth. Whatever the subject you're learning, if you can go really deep into the subject, and the more theoretical the basis you have, the higher the chance you're going to be able to acquire new skills on the spot. The other part I really want to talk about is randomness. You must have the capacity for serendipity. It is extremely important for you to be able to cherish and be open to random learning. Steve Jobs is a great case of this, right? When he was during his graduation speech at Stanford University back in 2003, I think, he specifically talked about the impact of earlier years when he was doing random things and connecting dots, and he was pursuing a little bit of in art. He was talking about the kind of impact that had on his product design and also his entire product line, the philosophy for his product line later. So I think that if you really want to be creative, you have to be willing to do things that are somewhat seems to be aimless, random, but with a mind with great depth. I think that you will have the capacity to create something, even if it's something that's somewhat random to people.
I think we always go back to Steve Jobs and Apple and Microsoft. Apple being the classic case. you know, in the Asian community, it's very STEM focused. Everybody wants to be an engineer, medical, doctor, lawyer. If you're not good enough, you know, that's it, right? So the appreciation for liberal arts is not there. And I think Microsoft and Apple are the classic example. Microsoft is STEM and Apple is liberal arts, right? And the question is which one is which, right? And so form and function and how you deal with the humanities side of technology is extremely valuable. And it's an area that Microsoft has fallen behind, even with all their great technologies.
Okay, I have a question for Mr. Thomas. So, how do you convince your parents to accept what you will do in college?
I'm sorry, I couldn't catch that. You said, how would you?
How will you convince your parents to accept what you want to do in college?
Oh, I see. Actually, to a large extent, I think the host answered that question. Every time my mom called me, where are you? My question, oh, I'm in the library. Why is it so noisy back there? Look, a lot of people right now, some midterms and finals, people really need to be studying. A lot of discussions going on. And there is music. Oh, you betcha. Music has been proven to be extremely helpful when it comes to the learning process. Didn't you know that? When I learn, I have to have some of the background music. Huh, interesting. How come when I was younger, when I was your age, when I was pursuing my degrees, my excellence, I did not have to rely on music as much as times have changed more. So yes, so that's generally, so these are the surface techniques that you can learn. But ultimately, over time, I think the best way is to deal with that is not exactly dealing with your parents, right? You gradually, as time passes, you gradually become closer and closer to your parents, and you share more information with them. You let them realize that there's a lot more than just a very monotonous side about you. And once you have that understanding, I think most parents, especially later in college, would cut you a lot of slack in terms of, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to go on a date. My parents actually became excited for me because I was telling them that, oh, so how did it go? So once you have that kind of rapport built, I think you don't have to deal with your parents, but rather you realize that they're always going to think in your best interest, and that's some of the rarest gifts that people can give you, and your parents will definitely be there for that.
I mean, your parents are doing the best they can. They don't know any better. Right? And so part of your role is to convince them that you have your life under control and that you know what you're doing. When I decided to study oceanography, my parents didn't understand what that was, so that was an interesting conversation. They thought about it a while, and then my mom said, well, I hope you find a fish that tastes good with no bones. That's what she thought it was about.
She's apparently very entrepreneurial. Good.
Do you know why you did not get into Harvard?
Oh, do I know why?
Do you know why you did not?
Oh.
And do you have any passion to share with us?
Oh, in terms of the college admissions? Oh, okay. With the benefit of hindsight, I think that I didn't market myself enough. You know, when I tend to, when I was growing up, I always wanted to do things slightly differently. I think that with Harvard, it might have been that they were looking for a different kind of student. So for my college essay, I wrote the differences in central banking systems between China and America. So there you go, that's my college essay. Obviously, University of Chicago being they like economics, immediately said, okay, you're in. And then with Harvard, these people came back, they're saying, we regret that we cannot offer you a spot in the upcoming class as usual, blah, blah, blah. But I think that it's because my marketing wasn't done right with Harvard. The reason I'm saying that in addition is that nowadays we have a lot of students that we teach actually that end up going to Harvard Law, and it just becomes so apparent that every school has such a distinct flavor to them. So Harvard is really in general, my understanding, with Harvard Law at least, it's a very traditional environment, it's a very conservative environment. We had some students that write a short paragraph that is in the style of something. It's almost like the introductory paragraph of a legal textbook, and the kid got in within 2 weeks. So you can tell that the kind of people that. So I think that when you apply to college, the most important thing is to get a really good sense of the people there. And for example, if I were to apply to Stanford, which I now regret I didn't apply because during my college years when I visited Stanford, I really loved their campus. I really love how creative that place is. On hindsight, if I were to apply it again, I would apply to Stanford with my first choice. But that would be, I think if you were to apply to Stanford, creativity should be your theme. If you were to apply to Harvard, I would try to become the president of the student body. I would show a very traditional, conservative streak, prestigious streak. I think that you need to market yourself accordingly based on the schools that you need to get into.
So I have a kind of a question I would like both of you to address. So one is that there is the view, as in Harvard College, that something you also know what you want to do, and just come in, we will educate you, and you will become whatever you pursue later on in life. I assume with that view, a lot of the Harvard graduates go on to grad school and specialize. Now, on the other hand, Georgetown, you had to come in through a particular school, and you probably declared pre-med, pre-law, pre-whatever. And so it's a very different mentality toward what college is supposed to do for you. And can you just speak to that? Because there's that view, college should be a liberal arts education, educate you for whatever it may come. And there's a view that college is where you prepare for a professional field. So you get all the technical stuff ready so you can go into that particular type of career.
Well, pre-law, Harvard has plenty of pre-law, pre-business, pre-med students, right? So, they don't have a pre-law category, but they have a government concentration, an economics concentration for business, and so people are kind of already thinking about those already, but it's not a job that you get right out in a particular, like they don't have accountant, right? Which you can come out and become an accountant or a CPA. That would be considered more pre-professional. So yes, I think a lot of people will come through, go to a field, maybe spend a few years, and then go to graduate school. Others people go right into graduate school. Some kids know exactly what they want to do, since they were 5. So I think it's a big mix, but I think part of the encouragement of that environment that they try to do is to have people maintain an open mind so that they learn more about different things and then be open to the possibility that there's something they've never seen before or experienced before that really will make a difference in their life that they didn't expect. Because you don't want to do that later, right? There's so many people that go to law school and then decide they don't want to be a lawyer. That's really bad.
Yeah, we definitely see a lot of that, actually. A lot of students would go to law school. These are generally liberal arts majors, and then when you ask them, I like to ask my students, why do you want to go to law school? What kind of law would you like to pursue? Most, to my surprise at least, 90% of the students generally would answer, because I want to help people. And my next question is, do you think this is the best way to help people? That's usually where the conversation would end. So most people, I think when it comes to choosing which career to pursue, there's always pre-written tracks that you can follow, but I think at some point you'll kind of diverge from that, and then you'll end up with something that either you like, who you want to pursue, or life will take you where you want to be. But in either case, I think when you're in college, it really doesn't matter what you study. Even for the purpose of admissions to graduate school, did you know that a very large, if you were a music major, then you tend to do extremely well when it comes to law school applications. If you are a classics major, you tend to do extremely well when it comes to law school applications, because people in law schools will look at this person and say, that's interesting, that's very, very diverse, and chances are the person has a lot of depth in these disciplines. And just the decision to pursue classics, reading Latin in very great depth, shows that the person has the tenacity to explore a complex subject in very small segments, one at a time. And that's the characteristic that these schools are looking for. So it's not so much what you pursue, but rather the kind of characteristics that you're demonstrating that would probably allow you to be picked. So this is why, after people graduate, you see a lot of job placements that seems to be odd. You're this and that major, why are you here in this firm? You see a lot of math majors entering into business models or finance or trading. That's precisely because they demonstrate the characteristics necessary for success, even though they don't have the vocational skills yet. But they can be developed very quickly because these students have reached the depth that would allow these skills to be developed very quickly.
All right, let's give a round of applause to our speaker.